The first thing to go is warmth. Not the memory of it, not yet, but the simple, physical sensation. The cold of Azkaban is not a weather pattern. It is a presence. It seeps through the stone not as a lack of heat, but as an active substance, a form of liquid darkness that fills the spaces between atoms. It finds its way into the marrow of your bones and stays there, a permanent resident in the architecture of the self. The prisoner in cell 142 has forgotten what it is to not be cold. He has been here for 6 years, he thinks. Time is a fluid thing, marked only by the metallic scrape of a food tray and the deeper, more profound rhythm of the guard's passage. He does not remember his name. He remembers sometimes a woman's face haloed in sunlight, but the memory is a weapon now. When the guards pass, that face is what they take. They draw it out of him, a shimmering thread of silver, and consume it. And each time they do, the image becomes thinner, more transparent, the sunlight a little dimmer. Soon she will be a ghost, then she will be nothing. Azkaban is not a place of punishment. Punishment implies a logic, a system of cause and effect. This is a place of unmaking. It is a slow, methodical erasure of the soul, conducted by creatures who feed on the very thing that makes a person human. Hope is the appetizer. Joy is the main course. Happy memories are the dessert, savoured slowly, drawn out until the victim is left with nothing but the residue of their worst moments. The shame, the fear, the anger, these things the Dementors leave behind. They are the bones of a life picked clean of all meat. The prisoner huddles in the corner, his rags of a uniform fused to his skin by filth and frost. He tries to conjure a thought that is his own, a thought the guards cannot eat. He tries to remember the precise taste of salt on his tongue from a day at the sea, the weight of a particular book in his hands, the sound of his own laughter. But these are the richest flavours. To think of them is to ring a dinner bell. He can feel the guards approaching now. The cold deepens. It is not a drop in temperature. It is a thickening of the air, a pressure that builds against the eardrums. A profound and absolute despair descends, a despair so complete it has no object. It is not the sadness of loss. It is the sadness of non-existence. The sound begins, a long, rattling inhalation, like a dying man's last breath drawn through water. It is the sound of his happiness being siphoned away. He clutches the memory of the woman in the sun, trying to hold it, to protect it. It is a foolish, hopeless gesture, a candle trying to stay lit in a hurricane. The Dementor pauses at his cell door. It does not have a face, only a void beneath a hood, but he feels its attention. It knows what he's hiding. It savours the struggle. The memory flickers, the woman's smile, the warmth of the light on her hair. It is so beautiful. It is the most painful thing he has ever known. He screams. The sound is a dry, tearing rasp, the cry of a throat that has forgotten its function, but there is no one to hear it. Or rather, there are hundreds who hear it, and they are all screaming too. The sound is a symphony of dissolution, the background music of the island. And in the Ministry of Magic, 500 miles away, a clerk files a report on provisioning costs for the Azkaban garrison. A wizard in Diagon Alley buys his child a new broom, and the world turns, bathed in a sun the prisoners no longer believe in. Azkaban wasn't an accident. It was not a regrettable necessity. It was a choice, and the wizards who made it, who renewed it with every budget approval and every signed transfer order, knew exactly what they were doing. The process of unmaking is a science perfected over centuries. The human soul is a complex structure, built of memory, experience, and the capacity for hope. The Dementors are masters of its deconstruction. They begin with the surface layers, the recent joys, the simple pleasures, the taste of a hot meal, the feeling of clean clothes, the sound of a favourite song. These are stripped away in the first few weeks, leaving the prisoner disoriented, adrift in a sea of grey monotony. The mind, desperate for stimulus, begins to dig deeper, unearthing older, more foundational happiness. A childhood birthday, a first love, the pride of a great accomplishment. These are the memories that define a person, the pillars that hold up the edifice of the self, and the Dementors feast upon them. The prisoner relives these moments in excruciating detail, not as a comforting dream, but as a final vibrant flare before they are extinguished forever. The pain of their removal is physical. It is a hollow ache in the chest, a phantom limb where a piece of the soul used to be. After the first year, most prisoners cease to be who they were. Their personalities are eroded, their histories plundered. They are left with only the bad things, the mistakes, the regrets, the moments of cruelty and failure. The Dementors do not feed on these. These memories are the prison inside the prison. The mind, with nothing else to occupy it, turns inward and gnaws on its own wounds. Guilt becomes the only companion. Shame becomes the only air to breathe. This is the state in which most prisoners exist, a waking nightmare from which there is no escape, trapped in a loop of their own worst selves, replaying every failure on an endless reel. The body follows the mind. Without hope, the immune system collapses. Without joy, the muscles atrophy. The skin becomes a translucent grey, stretched taut over bones that seem to shrink with every passing day. The eyes, when they are open, are vacant, seeing not the stone walls of the cell, but the inner landscape of their own private hell. They become husks, animated by the barest flicker of biological function. It is this slow living death that the Ministry of Magic calls justice. It is this systematic annihilation of a human being that they present to the world as a deterrent. They do not speak of the madness of the men and women who claw at their own faces until they bleed, who whisper the names of their victims or their loved ones until their voices are gone, who simply sit and stare into a corner for years until their hearts finally give out. These details are deemed unsuitable for public consumption. They are confined to internal reports, stamped with runes of secrecy, and filed in archives deep beneath the ministry, where the truth, like the prisoners, is left to rot in the dark. Sirius Black survived. This fact is a miracle, a defiance of the fundamental physics of the place. For 12 years, he breathed the soul-sucking air and remained himself. He did not do it with hope. Hope is kindling for Dementors. He did not do it with happy memories. Those were stripped from him in the first year, leaving him with the raw, bleeding wound of James and Lily's deaths, a wound the Dementors could worry at but not consume, for it was made of grief, not joy. He survived on a single pointed and utterly miserable thought, his own innocence. It was not a happy thought. It was a shard of obsidian he held in the centre of his mind. It was a source of rage, of burning, incandescent injustice. It gave him no comfort. It brought him no peace. And for that reason, it was worthless to the Dementors. They could not feed on it. It was poison to them. So he nurtured it. In the howling dark of his cell, he turned it over and over, polishing its sharp edges. Peter Pettigrew is alive. He betrayed them. I am innocent. It became a mantra, a rosary of rage. He recited it when the cold became unbearable. He clung to it when he felt his mind begin to fray at the edges. It was an anchor in the storm of despair, a fixed point in a universe of loss. And he had another secret, a secret self. When the despair grew too thick, when the memory of James's laugh became a weapon used against him, he would retreat. The change was not just a physical act, it was a mental one. He would fold his complex human consciousness into the simpler form of a dog. A large black dog, thin and shaggy. A dog's emotions are less nuanced. A dog feels loyalty, fear, hunger, a simple, uncomplicated love. The Dementors, feasting on the labyrinthine souls of witches and wizards, found the mind of a dog to be a thin, unsatisfying meal. They could sense him, but he was less. The texture of his being was different. He could lie on the cold floor of his cell, a grim, skeletal animal, and the great weight of his human grief would recede. He was Padfoot, and Padfoot's primary concern was survival. This duality saved him. The man kept the fire of injustice burning, and the dog weathered the storm. It was a fractured, painful existence, a life lived in the third person, but it was a life. He watched his fellow prisoners waste away. He saw the light go out of their eyes. He heard them screaming for mothers or children or gods who would never answer, and he endured. In a cell on a higher tier, in the wing reserved for the most dangerous, Bellatrix Lestrange also survived. Her method was different. She was not innocent, and she had no injustice to fuel her. She had something more potent: obsession. Her devotion to Lord Voldemort was not a happy memory. It was a consuming fire, a form of worship so absolute it left no room for anything else. It was a madness, but it was a structured madness. It was her anchor. The Dementors would descend on her cell, their chilling presence a promise of oblivion, and they would find a mind already scoured clean by a different kind of emptiness. She did not have memories of sunny afternoons or children's laughter for them to take. Her moments of triumph were tied to acts of cruelty. Her joy was a venomous thing that burned with the dark light of her master's approval. This, the Dementors found, was indigestible. It was like trying to drink acid. They could provoke her pain, the agony of her master's fall, the long empty years of waiting, but they could not take the core of her. The core was him. She would whisper his name into the stone. "My lord! My lord!" It was not a plea. It was a statement of being. It was the incantation that held the pieces of her together. While other prisoners were being hollowed out, Bellatrix was calcifying around her fanaticism. Her sanity, already a fragile thing, shattered, but the shards were all pointed in the same direction. She fed her own mania, nurtured her hatred, and in doing so, she starved the guards at her door. They left her alone more than the others. There was something in her cell that even they, creatures of pure despair, found unsettling. It was the presence of a will that had willingly, joyfully embraced the void. She did not fear the emptiness they offered. She had already found her own. She was a high priestess in a church of one, and her god was absence. The years in Azkaban did not break her. They distilled her. They burned away the last vestiges of the woman she had been, the Black Sister, the wife, and left only the weapon. Pure, unwavering, and utterly devoted. When the walls of her cell were blasted open years later, what emerged was not a survivor. It was a relic, preserved in the ice of her own hatred, perfectly intact and ready to serve. The Ministry of Magic is built on a foundation of secrets, but Azkaban is the keystone. It is the secret everyone knows and agrees not to speak of in polite company. They know what happens there. They know about the Dementors. They know that a life sentence is, in fact, a death sentence, delivered over the course of years instead of moments, and they accept it because it is convenient. A wizard named Eldritch Diggory, a minister in the 18th century, visited the prison. He saw the reality of it, the despair, the graveyard off the coast for those who died of hopelessness. He was horrified. He began to draw up plans to dismantle the place, to find an alternative. He died of dragonpox before he could implement them. And his successors, one after another, looked at his plans, looked at the political cost of appearing soft on crime, looked at the sheer, simple effectiveness of the place, and quietly put the plans back in the drawer. The choice was remade with every new administration. The arguments were always the same. It is the ultimate deterrent. The Dementors are a self-sustaining guard force requiring no salaries, no holidays, no pensions. They are ruthlessly efficient. And most importantly, they keep the worst of their world locked away where no one has to see them. Out of sight, out of soul. The Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures produces a report every 5 years on the Dementor population. It notes their breeding rates, their psychological impact, their perfect containment record. These reports are read by the Minister and the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. They are stamped, filed, and never mentioned again. There is a tacit understanding that what the Dementors do is a form of magic so dark it would be illegal under any other circumstances. The Dementor's kiss, the act of consuming a soul, is considered a fate worse than death, and yet the Ministry sanctions a slow-motion version of that same act for every single prisoner within those walls. It is the institutionalization of a mortal sin. This hypocrisy poisons the Ministry from the inside out. It creates a culture where certain lives are considered disposable, where certain cruelties are acceptable if they serve the greater good. It is a line of reasoning that leads directly to Dolores Umbridge. She is not an aberration. She is the logical conclusion of Azkaban. Her belief in the necessity of control, her willingness to use soul-altering magic, like the Black Quill, her casual cruelty in the name of order. These are the ethics of the island prison, brought home to the mainland. The existence of Azkaban gives men like Cornelius Fudge permission to look away, to prioritize comfort over truth, to sacrifice individuals for the sake of political stability. It teaches an entire society that some problems are best solved by giving them to monsters and pretending they no longer exist. The rot spreads. The wizarding world, for all its wonders, is a society that has made a pact with darkness for the sake of its own peace of mind. They read about escapes from Azkaban in the Daily Prophet with a shiver of fear, but they do not question the nature of the place itself. They see the pictures of the emaciated, hollow-eyed escapees and feel revulsion, not pity. The prison does its job too well. It dehumanizes its inmates so completely that by the time the public sees them, they already look like monsters. The propaganda is implicit. Who could feel sympathy for that? This is the genius of its design. It makes mercy impossible. The casual use of Dementors as guards at Hogwarts during Sirius Black's manhunt is the most telling symptom of this societal sickness. The school, a place of learning and safety for children, becomes a feeding ground. The idea that these creatures of pure despair should be set upon children, that a 13-year-old boy should be subjected to their presence because of the Ministry's incompetence, is met with protest, but not with universal outrage. The precedent has been set. If Dementors are an acceptable tool of the state, then their deployment is merely a matter of logistics. The moral question has already been answered. This is what Azkaban does. It lowers the bar for what is considered acceptable. It erodes the collective conscience. A society that tolerates a hell on earth for its criminals will eventually find it easier to justify lesser hells for its citizens. The fear of Azkaban is used to enforce compliance. The threat of it hangs over every trial at the Wizengamot. It is the dark shadow that gives the Ministry's laws their teeth. And because it is so terrifying, so absolute, no one dares to look too closely at the justice system that feeds it. Are there innocent men and women within its walls? Almost certainly. But to ask that question is to question the entire system. It is easier, safer, to believe that everyone inside deserves to be there. It is the sleepwalker's logic of a society that does not want to be awakened to the true cost of its own security. The wizarding world is not evil, but it is compromised. It has chosen to build its beautiful, magical world on top of a hidden torture chamber, and the silence from that chamber echoes in every corridor of power. Release is not freedom. For those few who are exonerated or who serve out their sentences and are deemed fit for society, the gates of Azkaban open onto a larger, more confusing prison. The world is too loud, too bright, too warm. The simple act of feeling the sun on your skin can be a shocking, painful experience after years of unrelenting cold. The capacity for joy, so long dormant and preyed upon, does not simply switch back on. It is a muscle that has atrophied, and the phantom pains of its absence are a constant companion. Survivors of Azkaban are marked not just by the gauntness of their frames or the haunted look in their eyes, but by a fundamental alteration in their relationship with happiness. They become afraid of it. In the prison, a happy memory was bait. It was a vulnerability that invited the guards. This conditioning is not easily unlearned. A moment of genuine laughter can be followed by a spike of pure panic. The simple pleasure of a good meal can trigger a deep-seated fear that it will be taken away. They live in a state of permanent emotional flinch. Sirius Black, hiding in Grimmauld Place, a free man in everything but name, struggles with this every day. He loves his godson, Harry. Intellectually, he knows that the sight of the boy should fill him with joy. He can remember what joy is supposed to feel like, but the feeling itself is a distant echo. There is a pane of thick cold glass between him and the world, a remnant of the island he can never truly leave behind. He can perform happiness, he can smile and laugh and play the part of the carefree man he once was, but inside the cold remains. The Dementors have damaged the machinery of his soul. He is a man trying to hear a symphony in a room that has been soundproofed. He can see the orchestra playing, but he can only catch the faintest vibrations. This is the true life sentence of Azkaban. It is not the years lost, but the theft of the ability to fully inhabit the years that are left. The Ministry offers no support for this. There are no healers who specialize in soul damage, no programs to reintegrate these broken men and women back into a world that now terrifies them. Their release is a bureaucratic act. A piece of parchment is signed, a cell door is opened, and they are left to navigate the wreckage of their own minds alone. Most fail. They drift to the fringes of society, living in poverty and isolation, unable to hold jobs, unable to form relationships, haunted by the ghosts of what was taken from them. They are living warnings of the price of the Ministry's convenience, and like the prison itself, they are warnings that society chooses to ignore. The world is not better for Azkaban, it is merely quieter. The Ministry mistakes this quiet for peace. It is the quiet of a graveyard, the silence of a people who have had their voices taken from them. The prison is a monument to fear. Fear of the dark arts, fear of chaos, and above all, fear of having to make difficult, morally complex choices. The Dementors are the simple answer to a complicated question, and the wizarding world has accepted that answer for centuries. They have traded a piece of their collective soul for a sense of order. The cost of this transaction is incalculable. It is measured in the lives ruined, the families destroyed, the slow decay of justice into an instrument of vengeance. It is measured in the character of a society that learns to look away from suffering, to rationalize cruelty, to accept the unacceptable because it happens to someone else. When Kingsley Shacklebolt finally dismantles the system, when the Dementors are driven from the island and a new, more humane prison is established, it is a victory. But it is not a cleansing. The stain remains. The memory of what they were willing to do, of the evil they were willing to sanction in the name of good, is woven into the fabric of their history. The island still sits in the North Sea, a scar on the water, a place of permanent cold. The cells are empty now, but they are not silent. They are filled with the echoes of every scream, every sob, every last happy memory that was devoured within their walls. They are a reminder that monsters are not always born of dark magic and evil intentions. Sometimes they are born of convenience, of apathy, of the quiet, reasonable, and utterly devastating choice to let someone else suffer for your own peace of mind. That is the true legacy of Azkaban. Not the dark wizards it held, but the darkness it revealed in those who built it. The cold from that island reached further than they could ever know. It touched them all, and it is a chill that will take generations to truly leave their bones. This channel explores the stories that hide in the shadows of the ones we know. If you appreciate this kind of deep dive, please consider supporting our work.